All right, so let's set the scene. It's December of 1990. The Berlin Wall is down, the Cold War is basically over, but a new conflict is just starting up in the Persian Gulf. I mean, the whole world is at this massive crossroads, and right in the middle of all that uncertainty, one speaker in Japan gets up and delivers this absolutely wild vision of where we were all headed.
And the speech kicks off with this incredibly powerful image, right? This idea that the very ground under our feet is shifting. It just perfectly captures that feeling of instability, when all the old rules don't seem to apply anymore. It really sets a dramatic stage for what's coming.
Now, to really get what we're about to dig into, you've got to try and put yourself back in that moment. It was this strange mix of incredible hope for some, but also, for a lot of people, deep, deep anxiety. The old world was clearly dying, but what was the new world going to look like? That was the big question.
So the speaker argues that when everything gets turned upside down like this, it forces us to rethink our most basic ideas. And they start with a word we all think we know: justice. The suggestion is that in times of massive change, maybe justice doesn't mean what we've always thought it means. So to try and make sense of all this chaos, the speech lays out this really unique framework. It basically says that justice isn't just one thing. It actually has two totally different and often conflicting faces. So on one side, you have what the speaker calls small justice. This is the everyday stuff: keeping order, enforcing laws, making sure the current system runs smoothly. But then, in these huge historical moments, something called great justice can emerge. And this is the justice of completely tearing down a broken system to build a new one. Think revolution. It's a radical idea, right? That one person's chaos is another person's justice. Okay, so that's the big question, isn't it? How do you know if blowing up the old order was actually just? Well, the speaker's answer is surprisingly simple. You can't. Not in the moment, anyway. The only real judge is history. Did the radical change end up making life better for more people in the long run? Only time can tell.
And then, to really drive the point home, the speech uses this framework to look back through history. It examines how this battle between small and great justice has played out in some of the biggest events the world has ever seen.
For instance, Japan's Meiji Restoration gets a thumbs up. It's judged as a successful great justice because it sparked modernization. But then you look at the Russian Revolution. By 1990, it's pretty clear that was a failed 70-year experiment. The Iranian Revolution is also seen as a step in the wrong direction. The logic is always the same. The final verdict depends on the long-term results.
So that's the framework. But honestly, this is where it gets absolutely stunning. The speech uses this logic not just to look at the past, but to make some incredibly specific, incredibly bold predictions about the future, all from that vantage point of December 1990.
And believe me, the speaker did not pull any punches. Looking at the world through this lens of crumbling old orders, they laid out 4 massive prophecies for the decades that were about to unfold. First up, and you have to remember this is a full year before it actually happened, the speech predicted the complete disintegration of the Soviet Union. The argument was simple. The system was a failed experiment, and its various republics were bound to break away and go their own way. Second, at the exact time when everyone was hyped for European unification, the speech basically said, nope, not gonna work. And it got even more specific, predicting that Great Britain would be the first to head for the exit. Third, right as America was taking its victory lap for winning the Cold War, the speaker claimed its long-term decline as the world's only superpower was already locked in. The old order that America represented was on its way out. And that brings us to the fourth and final prophecy. A new great justice was coming. Out of all the chaos in the Middle East, a new superpower would eventually rise up. One so powerful it would unify the entire Arab world and create a totally new order in that region.
But here's the thing. All of these huge geopolitical predictions, they were just the symptoms. The speaker argued that they were all just part of a much deeper, much more dangerous crisis that was about to hit all of humanity. Yeah, this was not a rosy picture of the future. The speech foresaw a world of mass starvation, of wars over basic resources, a brutal reality where nations would literally start preying on each other just to survive. And all this chaos, it argued, would put the 20th century's most beloved idea to the ultimate test. And this might be the most jaw-dropping prediction of them all. We're not just talking about countries changing. We're talking about the collapse of the most dominant political idea of our time. The speaker claimed that democracy itself
was doomed to be destroyed by the very thing that makes it work. So what's the logic here? Well, the argument is pretty simple, actually. Democracy isn't magic. It needs certain conditions to survive. It depends on a population that's educated, informed, and most importantly, not starving. Because when billions are desperate, rational debate goes out the window and you're left with mob rule. The system just buckles under the pressure. But after painting this unbelievably dark picture, you think it's all doom and gloom, right? But no, the speech doesn't just end there. Instead, it pivots and proposes this gigantic two-part mission to steer humanity away from that cliff edge. And the solution was twofold. Step one was economic. The speech predicted Japan would become this economic giant and that it had a duty to use that wealth to solve world hunger and stop these wars before they started. The second step was spiritual. Humanity had to create a new, universal set of values, a common culture, really, to get past all the religious and cultural divides that cause so much conflict. And you gotta understand, this wasn't pitched like some boring policy paper. This mission was framed as an epic struggle, a straight-up battle for the soul of the human race, to pull ourselves back from the brink of total self-destruction. Which all leads to this final, incredibly powerful and provocative phrase. It's a call to arms. It frames this whole global mission, both feeding the world and uniting it spiritually as the ultimate necessary conflict. A holy war not against some other country, but a war for the creation of a new, unified and peaceful future for everyone. What an absolutely stunning vision to offer a world standing on the edge.